Hi, I'm Laurie from the Truma Technical Support Team. In this video, we're going to look at a typical installation of a diesel combi heating and water system on a standard van conversion that we see here in our workshop. It is important before you start to install that you know where all your components and bits and pieces for the installation are going to go. You can find all that information in our other video. With this installation, we started with the fuel tank, which we'll have a look at now if you'd like to come around here. So in this installation, we started the install by dropping the fuel tank. That gave us access to the sender unit. The sender unit is clamped onto the vehicle body. We took the top off the unit here to allow the insertion of our fuel pipe into the bottom of the tank. Once it hits the bottom of the tank, we lift it up slightly and we leave approximately 20 to 30 millimeters at the bottom. This ensures that the diesel heater will never drain the last of your tank. You'll always be able to get to a fuel station to refill your tank. The fuel line runs from the sender unit. It goes across underneath the body of the vehicle into the pump, from the pump into the bottom of the floor underneath where the boiler is located. This is why it's key to know and plan where the boiler is going to be inside the vehicle before you start making any cuts to the floor. So after we've installed the fuel line, we've brought that up from underneath the floor. That comes up, and then we installed the boiler itself. It's got to be firmly on the floor. It's affixed with 4 screws round each corner. That holds the body of the boiler steady to the body of the vehicle. We then measure the flue pipe and line that up to the edge of the wall, and we cut that down to size, showing a nice smooth turn and return up to the side. A minimum of 600 millimeters is needed for the flue pipe. It does come in a variety of lengths and can also be cut down to that length if required. Once we've got it screwed down to the floor, we then affix the water pipes. With the water system in place, the cold water feed needs introducing to the boiler. We do this by inserting our frost control valve. That will release the cold water out into the outside atmosphere if the temperature drops below 4 degrees. That protects any frost damage or any damage due to low temperatures to the boiler. Alongside the frost valve, we also position a non-return valve, and that prevents any warm water seeping back into the cold water system. We then have a good quality 6mm square power cable on the 12-volt supply system. That's on the front of the PCB. The fuel line is attached via a harness onto the boiler, and then we connect the cable for the control panel, which will cover the control panel shortly, and the room stat for the temperature sensor of the vehicle in the habitation area as well. The main supply is already onto the boiler, and we link that via a fused switch onto the vehicle supply, and that allows you to have the hybrid 230 volt and diesel heating running in harmony together. When we're measuring up the flue pipe, it's important to mention that the location of it shouldn't be directly under a window. This one is actually offset. We'll cover that, the cutting of it and the measuring of it from the outside shortly. When it goes through to the outside of the vehicle, it's important to look at the fact that there's nothing flammable or that can be damaged by heat, because the flue pipe itself and the boiler will generate some ambient heat, and we don't want to damage any of the surroundings. So make sure there is sufficient clearance around the exhaust. So that's the boiler in situation. We're now going to look at the other internal components, namely the control panel and the room thermostat. So we have the boiler in situation. We're now going to move on to the positioning of the room thermostat. That should be located generally in the habitation area, round about head to shoulder height. That's where you get the best warmth in the vehicle, and that's where you want to measure the warmth so that the boiler knows when to click in and click out at its ambient temperature. The room thermostat is plugged in via a hard cable onto the PCB of the boiler. This cable will be run up the side behind the wall panel. Behind the cupboard, the customer will be positioning a cupboard of this vehicle, so the cable will be running behind the cupboard, and with a 10mm drill a push button through the surface of the cupboard, and the customer will be able to see what temperature is displayed on the iNet panel, and the boiler will be clicking in and out at the set temperature. We move on to the positioning of the control panel now. This control panel will be fitted in a fascia across the top of the door surface here. The panel itself is powered by a 12-volt supply unit, and that's cabled along the roofline through some cupboards into the battery compartment at the back. It's protected by a 1 amp fuse. The data lead is plugged into the back and runs along the roofline, down the side of the cupboard and back to the boiler down there. That's what sends a signal from the control panel down to the boiler. It has manual operation and Bluetooth control as well for the customer convenience. We're now going to jump back to the outside and show you how the exhaust is cut into shape. Okay, so the last part of the installation that we're going to cover is the installation of the flue to allow the exhaust gases to exit the boiler. We have already installed the customers on this vehicle prior to the film. The important thing to look at is any proximity to a window. You can't have exhaust gases coming out of an area immediately below a window. There are regulations where it's offset to the side and immediately below. This unit here is offset to the window. When you run the line down, you will see there is no upward flow of exhaust gases to the window, so we're perfectly safe to install this unit where it is. If the boiler was located slightly further to the right, we do have a switch that we can put in place which will prevent the window accidentally being opened when the boiler is in situ. We masked off the entire area with masking tape, and using a large hole saw we drove a pilot hole and then centred the point and took the hole out in one smooth action to prevent any loose edges. We then touched up with hammerite paint all around the edge to prevent any possible damage or rusting later on in the years of the usage of the vehicle. That allowed us then to offer the flue through to the outside, and we'll cover the joining of the flue together. The metal enclosure slides into the whole of the vehicle. That slides over the top, is pushed all the way down, and a Jubilee clip is fixed around the top and tightened to prevent any movement. This is done from the inside of the vehicle and is hidden from sight once the wall is in place. Once the flue is positioned on the outside of the vehicle, we have a small O-ring which is imperative on a diesel to be fitted. That sits across the shoulder. Is supplied as part of the kit, sits over the shoulder. When it's mounted on the vehicle, that is offered up and is held with 2 retaining screws, and the final image looks like that. Remove your masking tape and clean up the surrounding areas. The vehicle is then ready to be commissioned and introduced with fuel to start the heating process.